Hello friends, this is Grease speaking, and today we're finishing up the dark and disturbing paintings Iceberg. Shout out to Aloe Grimoire on Reddit for posting the Iceberg. This thing is awesome. There were a lot of cool entries in the last video, and I have to say, there are some really bizarre paintings in these last 3 tiers that have very disturbing backstories. So I'm excited, let's not waste any more time. This is the dark and disturbing paintings Iceberg. Tier 5. Works of Yuko Tatsushima. The first painting I came across while researching Yuko Tatsushima's work was actually familiar to me, and probably to you too. The painting is called I Can't Be a Wife Anymore, and the reason it's so recognizable is that the face of the woman in the painting was used in a creepypasta, Tomino's Hell, about a poem that if you read out loud would put a curse on the reader and bring them tragedy and death. I've actually seen this image used all around the creepy side of YouTube, and it's a shame to me that we only see the face of the painting because the entire thing is really disturbing. Basically all of Yuko's work is done in this style, and they don't get any less creepy, almost always featuring nightmarish women in bleak situations. The Lonely House on Adachi Moor in northern Japan. Another disturbing woodblock painting by Yoshitoshi, man that's fun to say. This one features a pregnant woman hanging by her feet while a creepy old guy with saggy nipples seems to be catching her hair on fire. God, every aspect of this one's messed up. It's bad enough without her being pregnant. I mean, come on, that's dark. Works of Anatoly Fomenko. Well, this is an interesting one. Anatoly Fomenko is actually a Russian mathematician. His art is often chromatic and features surreal and abstract people and creatures. It's really weird, but what's weirder is that Fomenko is the founder of the New Chronology conspiracy theory that says that events generally attributed to the ancient civilizations of Rome, Greece, and Egypt actually occurred during the Middle Ages, more than 1,000 years later. He came to this conclusion after finding that many historical events do not correspond mathematically with the dates on which they're supposed to have occurred. That has nothing to do with disturbing art, but I thought you should know because, I mean, how could I not mention that? Works of Issei Sagawa. Okay, this one just made me depressed. It's another one with a crazy backstory, and it's not for the faint of heart. Issei Sagawa is a murderer and a cannibal. In Paris in 1981, Sagawa invited his classmate Renee Hardfeld over to study where he shot her with a rifle, had sex with her corpse, and then ate it. He did this because he's a small and ugly man and thought that he could absorb her vibrance by eating her flesh. While attempting to dispose of the body, Sagawa was caught in the act by French police. Although he was declared legally insane and sent to a mental institution indefinitely. Eventually he was deported back to Japan where psychologists found that he was actually sane. So since his charges were dropped in France, Issei Sagawa was set free and was so until his death in 2022. Obviously this case has enraged people for decades now since a self-professing cannibal and murderer is just freely walking the streets. But what's even more sick is that Sagawa seemed to revel in his celebrity no matter how negative, and that's where the artwork comes into play, as Sagawa made several art pieces and even a manga that were just illustrated versions of the evil deeds he committed. Well, I'm glad he's dead and that as far as I know he never committed any more heinous acts, but my god, this story just got me queasy and the details of the whole event are really gnarly, so if you want to look more into it, be my guest, but we're talking about art here people, let's get back to it. Woman of the Rain. This is another one of those supposed haunting paintings. It was done by Svetlana Telets, who claims that she painted it with the help of an invisible guiding hand, which is a great way to kick off a haunted painting. Apparently multiple people bought and returned the painting after experiencing sleepless nightmares and hearing or seeing unknown entities walking around their homes. It's now displayed in the window of a shop in Kiev where customers often say they see the woman in the painting move. Obviously none of this can be completely substantiated, but either way it's a very off-putting painting and it's hard to put a finger on why. Works of Seja Stoshka. Seja Stoshka was a survivor of the Holocaust who began to paint depictions of her time spent in 3 concentration camps as a child. There's not much to say about these, other than it's kind of amazing that she lived through it. The Murderer. Munch is back at it again with another dark one. The Murderer simply shows a man walking down a road with blood on his hands and what looks like a crumpled corpse in the background. What makes this extra creepy is the man's face, which only contains small black eyes. Either the killer here is wearing a mask or Munch intentionally made his face featureless, but either way it gives me the creeps. Works of Van Nath. Van Nath was one of the only 7 known adult survivors of S21 camp, where 20,000 Cambodians were tortured and executed during the Khmer Rouge regime. He made a series of paintings depicting this horrible torture. According to Van Nath, he painted the series so history wouldn't repeat itself. Damn. Lágrimas de Sangre. The English translation being Tears of Blood, this painting by Oswaldo Guazamin shows a man covering his face with spindly, oversized fingers while blood pours from his sunken eyes. The way the man stares at you with those wide eyes is haunting. Works of Edith Birkin. Edith Birkin is another Holocaust survivor who depicted the horrible events in paintings. She has a really unique style that makes the people in her paintings stand out. Even her work that isn't directly showing Holocaust imagery can be very eerie or sad looking. The Sirens. The Sirens is a depiction of the mythological sirens done by John Longstaff. It seems to be a scene inspired by the Odyssey in which the sirens lure men in with their angelic singing, only for them to crash into the rocks and die. This painting does a good job of showing the beauty that draws the men in the top half of the painting, while also showing the lurking reality of the sirens below as they wait by a pile of bones for their next victim. Creepy. The Hiroshima Panel Series. The Hiroshima Panels is a collection of 15 art pieces that were created over the course of 32 years by artists Iri and Toshi Maruki. The panels show the horrors of the bombing of Hiroshima and don't take it lightly, showcasing the full violence and gore of the event. Investing 32 years of your life into art like this is commendable, and the fact that it's a husband-wife pair working together is just straight up cute, I mean, let's be honest. Fernando Botero's Abu Ghraib series. This is a series of drawings and paintings by Botero depicting the torture of Iraqi prisoners by American security personnel at Abu Ghraib Detention Center west of Baghdad. They're pretty brutal, showing the bloody and bruised naked bodies of the tortured prisoners. Jack the Ripper's bedroom. The dark painting by Walter Sickert has a creepy backstory. Sickert's landlady told him that she thought the previous tenant may have been Jack the Ripper. Yeah, you know, the guy who raped and murdered numerous prostitutes? Yeah, I think he might have stayed here before you. It's not the type of thing you'd expect to hear from the landlady. Anyway, Sickert was inspired by this and painted his room and gave it the appropriate title. Having the thought of Jack the Ripper possibly living in this room makes the painting seem a lot more menacing. Hongseung Dam Seoul Ferry Paintings. The sinking of the MV Seoul in South Korea cost the lives of 306 passengers, 250 of which were only high school students. The whole event was very controversial as the ferry's captain and crew were widely criticized, as well as the South Korean government for mishandling the disaster. Eventually, the captain and 3 crew members were charged with murder, while the other 11 members of the crew were indicted for abandoning the ship. All that to say that the artist Hongseung Dam depicted these events in a series of paintings. The paintings show the passengers struggling and failing to survive drowning. Tier 6. I ran towards my house through a sea of flames. Another tragic depiction of the bombing of Hiroshima, this Yoshiko Michisuji painting is very disturbing, especially since the name really explains exactly what's happening and it just sounds horrifying. Works of Katerina Apostolakau. Katerina Apostolakau just makes non-stop nightmare fuel. In her own words, she explores elements of the unconscious and subconscious through expressionistic figures, which represents the condition of humanity and the individual at the same time. Well, whatever she's doing, she nails it because these paintings are really unsettling. She's particularly good at painting faces that are either demented or just off in some way. My Eyes in the Time of Apparition. August Natterer was a schizophrenic who at one point suffered from a hallucination concerning the Last Judgment, during which 10,000 images flashed before his eyes in half an hour. These visions inspired a lot of his works, including My Eyes in the Time of Apparition. Unfortunately, he died in an asylum in 1933. Works of Alexandra Waliszewski. I don't even know where to start with this one. This lady knows how to paint some weird and disturbing stuff. Her morbid compositions borrow from Hieronymus Bosch and Francisco de Goya and imbue their dark subject matter with a dystopian surrealism inspired by Zdzisław Beksinski. Yeah, so basically if you took 3 of the more disturbing artists from the first few tiers and combined them into one, you'd get Alexandra. She explores themes of violence and BDSM, sometimes in a fantasy setting, other times it's modern day, but it's almost always messed up. She's got a lot of work out there, and although it's generally dark themed, there's still a lot of variety, so it's worth going down the rabbit hole. Works of Peter Ondrejka. Okay, we're getting really obscure here. Peter Ondrejka's art was often done in a sort of yellowish hue and often depicts really disturbing looking faces. A few standouts are A Man in a Mask, which shows a man removing the mask of his own face, revealing his actual, more psychotic face beneath, and The Prodigal Son, which shows a person with a very creepy looking face and long fingers crouching down. It's hard to explain what's so unsettling about these, but man, they give me the creeps. Chopin's Death March. This is a painting based on Chopin's famous Death March, showing a woman being carried off by angels in an open casket at night while a man screams out in agony. Unfortunately, the artist Ladislaw Podkwinski died prematurely, this being his last and unfinished painting, which makes the whole thing morbidly ironic. Works of R.F. Pangborn. Pangborn makes nightmare-like artwork inspired by his anxiety and depression, often creating twisted abominations of humans. Interestingly enough, he started off by making fan art of famous films before stumbling upon his own dark creations as means of dealing with his own inner demons. A lot of people find that his paintings are oddly familiar, like they've seen these entities in their nightmares. One of the Death Pits, Belsen. SS guards collecting bodies. Yep, that's the actual title of this one. The artist, Leslie Cole, recorded several events of WW2, including the liberation of Belsen. The painting is a view from one end of a huge mass grave containing the emaciated remains of Belsen inmates. SS guards, guarded by British soldiers, are throwing more bodies into the pit. Part of the Belsen compound can be seen in the background. Tetanus following gunshot wounds. Another painting where the title explains it bluntly. This is a work by Charles Bell showcasing the effects of tetanus, where a man is seemingly in the middle of a spasm. In case you don't know, tetanus is a pretty horrible condition that luckily is easily treated nowadays, but essentially it's an infection that causes the body to have muscle spasms that can be so severe they can actually break bones. It's worth noting that this painting is actually the official image Wikipedia uses for its article on tetanus. Works of Elmer Wayne Henley. Okay, boys and girls, we got another serial killer on our hands here. Elmer Wayne Henley was an accomplice to Dean Corll in what's now known as the Houston mass murders, where at least 28 teenage boys were abducted, tortured, and murdered by Corll. Henley helped procure the boys for Corll, luring them back to his apartment. He actually, in a strange twist, ended up killing Corll and confessing to everything. So he's locked up to this day, and apparently he likes to paint. It's actually extremely hard to find his art, and none of it is too crazy other than some weird BDSM stuff. And just a side note, at one point someone bought one of his art pieces just to deliberately burn it. The man who did it was apparently enraged because the artwork was what he thought was a nude teenage boy, but in fact it was actually a Brazilian woman. This whole story is just weird, man. Ukojini. At first glance, this painting isn't that dark. It seems like someone making their bed, but the figure in the painting is actually supposed to be Death, making the bed after taking someone's soul. Whoa. Works of Shobin Yang. Shobin Yang really stands out here because his art, it's hard to explain. It almost looks digitally distorted. He does these paintings of faces that are just so disturbing. I don't know what else to say about it. If you want to be weirded out, check these out. Treasures of Satan. Treasures of Satan is a surreal art piece by Jean Delville, depicting Satan hovering above a seemingly endless torrent of naked flesh. It's a strange piece of art, especially the way all the bodies blend together, and some people have even theorized that Delville had some contact with aliens and that this was inspired by it. I don't know. Works of Owen Maseko. Owen Maseko is a Zimbabwean visual artist and installation artist. He was arrested in 2010, less than 24 hours after his new exhibition opened at the National Gallery in Bulawayo. His work referred to the massacre of civilians in the 1980s, which was carried out by forces loyal to Robert Mugabe, who served as prime minister at the time. He was charged under the Public Order and Security Act with undermining the authority of Robert Mugabe. The paintings themselves are fairly disturbing, covered in red and showing children crying out in terror. Premonition. Premonition is a very dark painting by Henrik Weisenhoff that at first glance just seems like a nice cottage in the countryside on a warm summer evening, except for the fact that the Reaper is slowly appearing in the middle of the frame. I really like the detail of the dogs howling here, like they're picking up on the fact that death is approaching. Tier 7. Port Arthur. Port Arthur by Rodney Pope is a seemingly innocent painting of the real-life location, which was home to a convict settlement housing hundreds of prisoners. What makes this painting particularly disturbing is the figure of a man carrying a gun. In April 1996, Port Arthur, now a museum and historic site, was the location of a massacre. Martin Bryant murdered 35 people and wounded 23 more before being captured. The man in the painting is actually supposed to be a depiction of Martin Bryant. Knowing that the painting is actually of a mass murderer minutes before he commits the act is pretty creepy. The Truth Lies in Old Books. This is a very dark and strange painting that features a naked woman sprawled out on the pages of a massive book, possibly the Bible. Instead of a face, her head is completely replaced by a skull. She holds thorns in her hand, which is covered in blood. It's both beautiful and disturbing at the same time. Definitely one I won't forget anytime soon. Water Ghost. Alfred Cuban was an artist and writer whose famous work was actually a novel titled The Other Side, about a journey through an imaginary land. It has an atmosphere of claustrophobic absurdity, which isn't a bad way to describe his artwork as well. The Water Ghost is a particularly disturbing painting that shows a nightmare demon standing on the water. The audience. I think the reason this artwork by H. James Hoff is so unsettling is that from a distance, it actually looks like a really old damaged photo of an audience or something. But when you look closer, you realize it's not a photo at all and that the people's faces are so distorted. It really feels like something from a nightmare. Gaze. Arnold Schoenberg is known to have emotionally intense paintings, and this is very true in Gaze, which is fairly simple and yet extremely unsettling. It's simply a pair of strange eyes staring directly at the viewer. This is not to be confused with The Red Look, which is a very similar painting by the artist showing a face with glowing red eyes. Christmas Eve. Maybe one of the darkest Christmas-themed paintings of all time, Christmas Eve by Janina Talik simply shows a beautiful Christmas tree, likely decorated by Auschwitz guards, lighting a pile of bodies that lay under it as survivors walk by. I mean, you want to talk about painting a picture? My God. Bad Behavior. Bad Behavior by Bilana Durdovic is a very bizarre painting of a young boy who seems to be tied or tangled up in a shower or locker room hanging by his arms. The thing that makes it particularly creepy is the way the boy seems to be looking at you, plus his eyes are pure black. Kuzozu art. Kuzozu is such a bizarre concept, but it was a popular form of Japanese watercolor art for hundreds of years where you essentially detail bodies decomposing in water. I know, it sounds like BS, but that's really what it is. Like, for example, the death of the noble lady and decay of her body is a series of paintings showing exactly that, and it's absolutely disgusting. I don't know who decided this needed to be a whole genre, but man, how weird. Works of Kim Noble as Rhea Pratt. Okay guys, we are finishing up this iceberg with a weird one. So Kim Noble has dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personalities. In fact, she has 14 different personalities and all of them are artists. I mean, they're all different artists with completely different styles. That is wild. But it gets even weirder. So as mentioned in the title of this entry, we're specifically focusing on Rhea Pratt, one of Noble's personalities, and the one who makes easily the most disturbing art, usually featuring people in various forms of bondage. One painting called Good Dog shows a human who has another human on a leash while what looks like children are locked in a cage in the background. The really creepy thing about Rita's paintings is that there are bizarre messages written backwards into the painting, often crying for help. These messages say things like, "Please free me." Whoa, that is spooky, man. Okay, we did it folks, another iceberg down, and man, this one was really cool. I feel like I was exposed to a ton of art and artists that I would have never known otherwise, which is why I love icebergs. Big shout out to Kill Me Katie for letting me use his music in my videos. If you like the intro and outro music here, that's actually straight from his new EP, Crown Apple Spite, so check that out and I'll link it below. Of course, big thank you to my patrons, Naomi Romero, Soma, and Krusty the Crab. I can't thank you guys enough for the support, it really means a lot to me. If you want to get a shout out like that at the end of every video, along with a bunch of bonus and behind the scenes content, consider becoming a patron, the link's below. But I appreciate you guys watching at all, so thank you, and I think that's all I got. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.
All that for a little bit of money, will you tell me all the times I failed you? I guess that I never really had it in me. I guess that I never got a clue.